Hello, my name is Hayden Andrea, and I'm from Freedom High School. And for my final, I chose to look at potential locations for solar farms in the state of Texas. For a bit of background information, in the past 20 years, Texas has been hit with over 180 major power outages that take away access to important services for millions of people across Texas. These power outages do not even include minor outages that affect people on the daily. And the reason for this is because Texas is on its own power grid separate from the US. And that means that any small thing that happens to the Texas power grid affects every single person in Texas. So it's like a cascading effect. For my final, I wanted to look at areas where we can build solar farms so that we can potentially provide Texas with more power, or specific areas with power, so that if one system were to fail, not all of Texas would be taken out and people can rely on solar energy to power their homes. Before the maps are discussed, this indicator up at the top gives us a number to explain about how severe the problem is in Texas. In the year 2021, over 9 million people lost power due to winter storms that took out the power grid for a long period of time. At the time, that is more than 40% of the population that was left without power, which means that 1 out of every 3 people could not gain access to electricity or running water or just the ability to call people outside of Texas. For my dashboard, the main things that I looked at are solar potential here, as well as land cover. These factors are going to tell us if the area that we build in is effective and realistic. Before exploring these factors, we need to make sure that the areas that we're building in are not in danger and they're going to be safe to choose. I chose to build in areas in Oldham County, which is up here towards the north, King County, which is more central in Texas, and then Culberson County, which is towards the west in the desert. There's a few reasons I chose these areas. One reason, and one of the main reasons I chose these areas are because I want the areas that I chose to be more spread out from one another so that we can get an idea of what solar farms are going to look like across Texas instead of it just being in one specific area. That way we can see if one place is going to be a little bit better than the other. Besides for those reasons, I also examined some factors that look at areas where we shouldn't build. One main factor that I looked at, and the one that's currently on the map here, is tornadoes. Tornadoes are a very common occurrence in Texas due to its very large flat land, and these tornadoes can cause a large amount of property damage and tear up buildings. On the map, the blue boxes here represent a higher concentration of tornadoes. We can look at the legend here. And we can see that the majority of tornadoes are in the eastern and southern parts of Texas, as well as a little bit in the panhandle up here and like a strip. So we want to make sure that the areas we chose are not in these areas. So we're avoiding the east here, and then they're not in the area of the strip here. Along with tornadoes, we also looked at hurricane tracks in Texas. Hurricanes are very, very common in Texas due to its proximity of the Gulf down here. Hurricanes are known to tear up all of these southern states and especially Texas due to its large connection here. Just like tornadoes, we could see that most of the hurricanes affect the southern and eastern parts of Texas, much less, and actually none in the panhandle here. And so the areas here are good because they're out of the way of the tornadoes and also the hurricanes. So they're not going to be hit by any disasters, which are the main cause of power outages in Texas. A less destructive factor that we should consider when choosing areas is population in Texas. Solar farms can take up a lot of land, so we have to choose areas that are not super densely populated. This layer here, the darker colors represent counties that have more people per square mile. If we choose up the legend here, we can see darker colors up here, 462 people per square mile. And we can see that the darker colors tend to be towards the eastern sides of Texas. And if we actually go down here, we can click on some of the highest concentrated people counties, and if we click on them, we can see where it takes us. It takes us to the eastern and southern sides of Texas. There's not that many people out towards the west of Texas. That's because this is mostly flat, dry, desert land. So this is where we're going to want to be to build. The final factor that we want to look at when choosing an area to build in is cropland in Texas. Currently, or as of 2020, 74% of the land in Texas is used for farming, and it's one of their main industries in Texas. due to its large, flat, open land. That's really good to build in because they get a lot of sun, which is why we want to build solar farms here. This layer here represents the makeup of cropland in Texas with these multicolored dots representing different crops. And we can see the majority of crops here are actually not towards the east and the south like we saw with the other layers. They're actually more towards the north and like the central parts of Texas. And we can see large areas of this is cotton here in the panhandle. And then right above that is sorghum, which is a wheat substitute. And they're mostly towards this area, so when we build our solar farms, we want to make sure they're not in this direct area. So now that we found out where we can build, we want to look at the areas that we're building at to see if they are effective and usable. To do this, we looked mainly at solar potential and the land cover. This current layer that we're looking at here is solar potential. The solar potential in GIS is measured in kilowatt hours and is measured over the course of 1 year, which was the year 2024 for this project. So the start of 2024 to the end. The darker spots on this layer represent higher areas of solar potential, and if we pull up the legend, we can see what we're looking at. This area here is Culberson County, which is towards the west of Texas in this desert. And then going back to the legend here, we can see what we're looking at with the darker red colors being this like much higher, and then you get more blue, and then only in this case you get yellow as you get less. Culberson County is the area with the highest solar potential that we're looking at, with a measuring of a max of 1,800 kilowatt hours over 1 year. And that's represented by these dark red colors that we see here, with these yellow representing the areas of less solar potential, and then the darker representing higher solar potential. We can also look at the other areas that we studied, with this being Oldham County, and we can see that while Oldham County does have a lower max solar potential compared to Culberson County, with being at 1,678 kilowatt hours over the course of a year. We can see that most of it is actually red dots, which means that a lot of Oldham County is very high solar potential, so it's going to be easy to construct here. And the final area that we looked at was King County, which was towards central, and it actually has the lowest solar potential out of the areas that we looked at, only being a max of 1,588. And that's because that lines up pretty well. We can see these large yellow splotches, which represent areas of lower solar potential. And if we actually pull up our imagery base map here and turn off this layer, we can see that the way it lines up, those lower solar potential areas are in like wooded and foresty areas. It lines up here. So if we were to clear those areas, we would get a lot more solar potential out of this. After that, we looked at grassland. Not grassland. We looked at land cover because we want to make sure that the areas that we can build in are actually effective areas. So what we're looking at here is the Culberson County. And we could see that this area is mostly made up of grassland and shrubland. And that's really a common trend out of all the areas we looked at. It's mostly all shrubland and then some grassland. And that's good because grassland, shrubland, and then also areas like barren land or just wooded areas, those are areas that we can clear very easily. What we want to avoid is areas of construction or something like areas of water or protected areas, because those are areas that we cannot just clear immediately. It's going to take a lot of effort to build there, or we can't build there at all. We also looked at other areas such as Culberson County. Culberson County is actually mostly shrubland instead of grassland. The other one was more of a mix. This is 98% shrubland and 1.5% grassland, which is a very, very good makeup for our construction because these are areas that we can clear. We also looked at King County. King County actually has more different makeup. There's no grassland layer, but we see evergreen forests and barren land. When we looked at the map earlier, this evergreen forest here, that's what this part was that we were looking at. So that's why it has a lower solar potential in total, because it has a forested area. And then this area up here is actually just a small road that runs through this place to connect to a farm, which is around here. So it would not be that hard just to reroute this road. We could change it from like right here to go up here and then around. So that's not a hard workaround. Looking at these areas, we want to see how much power that it can provide to people. And so we did a small amount of math here to calculate what the potential energy provision is. All of these areas have the same land at 2.2 kilometers squared, or around 544 acres. And with each solar panel, each commercial solar panel only being around 2 meters, we can fit an estimated amount of 1.1 million solar panels in these areas. And so to get the estimated number of energy here, we just had to get the solar radiation input and calculate it for 1 year. And so that's going to be 792 gigawatt hours per year if we're looking at Culberson County. And the average Texan uses 14,000 kilowatt hours per year of energy, and that is mainly because they have to keep their house air conditioned so much longer because it's a hotter state. And so for the Culberson County study area, we can provide energy for an estimated 56,598 people, which is a large amount of people to provide power for. King County, we can provide energy for around 49,912 people because it was the lowest amount of solar potential, but that's still a large amount of people to be providing power for. And then for Oldham County, we can provide energy for 52,763 people. The reason why this is an important map to look at is because this is not a map where we have to just choose one of these areas to build on. All of these areas and many, many more areas can have construction done on them. So we can use this data here to see what areas are going to be best to build in, because now we can provide power just with these areas alone for over 100,000 people in Texas. And imagine what we can do if we fill up more of this empty land in Texas. And for my sources, the USA NLCD land cover came from ArcGIS Online, and that's what I used to get this here. The LiDAR layer to get solar potential came from Texas Geographic Information Office. And then sorry, let me just clear that notification. And then to get the amount of power used for people per year, that came from TexasEnergyGuide.com.